Thank you all so much for joining us again for this Georgia Drawdown Climate Interview Series. My name is Eriqah Vincent, and today we are really grateful to be joined by Maurice Carter, who is the co-founder and president of Sustainable Newton. Hi, Maurice. Thanks for being here with me. I'd love for you to start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and the work that Sustainable Newton is doing in the community.
Hi, Eriqah. It's great to be here. Personally, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with the audience, and our organization, Sustainable Newton, appreciates all the work that you and everybody at Drawdown, Georgia does, allowing us to be a part of a great mission together. I'm a native of Atlanta, Georgia. My wife and I have been married for 46 years. 44 years. We moved to Covington, where she's from, in 2004. Had a 33-year career in IT, strategic planning, business consulting, and retired from that 9 years ago, which is hard to believe. But even 10 years before that, I was becoming involved in nonprofit leadership, and moving to a smaller town like Covington. We're about 40 miles east of Atlanta. Is that it's so easy to get involved in a lot of different things. I helped found a cycling club, reinvigorated a trails organization, worked with an after-school learning program, and various things. But in 2018, we founded Sustainable Newton. We're a nonprofit, all volunteer, no staff. We have enough budget to do the things we do, but we're not big into just raising lots of money. We're into doing things. That's how we got started. A group of people all concerned about climate change and, about the impacts on our own selves, our children, our families, our community. But we weren't really into fretting and worrying, and we didn't get together to commiserate. We got together to do something. And so from the beginning, we were focused on solutions and how do we bring those solutions into Newton County, where we live. And so we work with households, we work with local governments, and we work with local businesses, small and large, on climate action and helping them take action and helping them understand. When we started, it was, how do we get people engaged? How do we inform them of why we're concerned? How do we get them interested? And then it was more, how do we get them involved in activities? And eventually our goal was, how do we enable people to take action? So we did a Solarize program as an example. We've worked with our local governments on a number of different kinds of programs. And so it's always about the end result, which is the action people can take and the actions we can take in our own lives and supporting each other in that.
That's wonderful. I am not a native of Georgia, which I've talked about often on this show. I'm from New Jersey originally, but I've been here, goodness, it'll be 20 years next year. I'm still learning, even after 20 years, but Newton is on my side of town. I am in DeKalb County, so just west of y'all. I love what you said about a small community of folks that wanted to get together and do something. Didn't necessarily feel like we needed to be staffed up, but still felt like you could do really great work with that kind of volunteer-based organization. Sustainable Newton has really taken advantage of Drawdown Georgia's trackers and the tools and frameworks of the 20 climate solutions that Drawdown Georgia is committed to guide the work that you all are doing, which is phenomenal. Can you give us some specific examples of how these resources have been useful to your organization?
Sure. It's been such a fruitful relationship for us to have access to expertise, deep knowledge and data we can work from. When we started, again, we were about solutions, but what solutions? And especially when you're trying to make it relevant in the community where you live. We got Paul Hawkins' book on Project Drawdown, and here's 100 things we could do. And geez, they're kind of complicated. We had a couple of science professors from Oxford College, the 2-year college of Emory, on our board. So we had some scientific background, but turning that into actionable solutions at a local level was a struggle in our first year. Somewhere, I think it was the first Georgia Climate Conference, one of our board members heard about this thing called Drawdown Georgia that was going to be launched the following year. I guess it was 2019 by the time we heard about it. We were geared up and ready when the framework came out. What it's done for us is it helped us simplify for our own selves, like where do we prioritize? But it also made it easier for us to explain ourselves, because even though you got 20 solutions versus 100, most organizations are focused on one thing, right? So we promote composting, or we promote renewable agriculture, or we promote solar. To go from one day working with somebody on how to compost in their backyard and another day with a local business how to leverage renewable energy or cogeneration or demand response, and then somebody else about how to roll out an EV infrastructure, they could almost become, wait a minute, what are you guys? The framework gave us something we could always point back to and said, this is how to understand. And it also gave us a way to dial it in for a particular audience. When we go to an event, we always have our literature and who we are, but somewhere on our table is the framework. So we can say, maybe this isn't relevant to you, don't own a home, so these things don't matter, but we could all waste less food. We can all use less energy, or walk instead of drive, bike instead of drive. The framework did that for us. And then as the Drawdown Georgia program evolved, and as we grew more competent in what we were trying to do, things like the greenhouse gas tracker gave us data to back up our conversations when we tried to explain, for instance, why are electric vehicles an important part of what we need to do in Newton County, and walking and biking. We don't have transit per se, other than some bus service in and out of the county. Transportation is the largest source of greenhouse gases.
Right.
In Georgia, I think it was like we found 54% of our local emissions because we're right on an interstate. I mean, Covington, we're right on I-20.
Right.
So it's a lot of commuting. It helps to say we're not just picking this because everybody's doing it. We're picking it because it directly addresses an issue we have here. We've worked very hard around the home energy and efficiency incentives of the Inflation Reduction Act, trying to help households in Newton County take advantage of those things. We can point back to the emissions related to energy in our residential parts of our community, and even things like preserving forests and green space. Newton County was one of the 10 fastest growing counties in America in the late 90s and the first into the 2008 until the crash. In fact, we were hit very hard by the housing collapse in 2008 because it was so much of our economy. So you can see where losing those trees also had an impact on our emissions because they weren't absorbing the stuff that the cars were putting out. We love having those kind of tools. You can't start every conversation with that, but when you get somebody interested, whether it's a local policymaker or a business leader, you can show them, we're not scientists. I'm not a scientist, but we're connected to really smart people who are doing really cool things. So we've used that. I would say a large part of what Drawdown Georgia has done for us is positioned us in a space where we're with other people. And so we're inspired by them. We hope sometimes that we inspire them. One of our proudest moments was the first Ray Day event that we went to down at Serenbe 3 years ago now. Ray C. Anderson Foundation trustee Phil Langford came over and said, "Oh, Sustainable Newton. Oh, I've been wanting to talk. You guys get it. I love what y'all are doing." And then his wife Harriet came over, and together we all talked. But it let us know we are seen. It matters. So many other people and organizations, we become part of a community. So it gives us ideas, it gives us direction, but it also just keeps us inspired on the days that maybe it's not so wonderful and it seems like we're not getting anywhere. We look back and we say, actually, yes, we are.
I love the community that Drawdown Georgia and the Ray C. Anderson Foundation and our partners are creating. I was nodding my head vigorously when you said we're right on I-20, trees being cut down, because again, we are neighbors and same.
That's one of the cool things of the tracker is you can compare, and we can find our colleagues, our fellow counties that face the same challenges. Now, maybe there's a slightly different wrinkle, there's a different industry or other things, but we all have a very heavy transportation impact, and also the threat of preserving trees in the face of growth.
It's such a catch-22, right? We want our neighborhoods to grow. We want the growth in our communities, and also want to preserve that nature space, not only for green space in general, but also to capture some of those greenhouse gases. I totally agree. My next question is, are there other folks in other parts of the state and other parts of the country that are interested in starting, these small community organizations? Don't really need a whole lot of build up and don't really need a whole lot of bells and whistles, but what advice do you have for climate advocates across Georgia? who are interested in starting their own local organization to advance the climate solutions that we've talked about in others?
Well, I think the key for us, I mean, where we originate is just talking to one another. I mean, finding people that maybe, a couple of the folks. I got involved because I reached out to a couple of friends who had organic farms. I had been trying to compost in my little downtown Covington city lot, a quarter and a third of an acre. And I figured out I can make the compost, but I got nothing to do with it. Does anybody need this? I don't mind making it. I don't want to put my food in the trash. And so we talked about that, but they said, maybe not. Maybe we can't take that, but we have this group that's been meeting for a while and we would love to have you join the conversation. So it was talk. And I think we have a saying in our culture that talk is cheap, but meaningful dialogue is the most precious thing we have. Catherine Hayhoe, the author and speaker, climate scientist, she'll tell people the most important thing you can do to address climate change is talk about it. So take that to heart. That doesn't mean that every conversation is going to go the way you want, but don't be afraid. There's plenty of people out there that share your concern. And don't just talk about the problem, talk about solutions. What do you know about? Drawdown Georgia has helped us become more informed and conversational, but lead with the solutions. We don't want to feel worse. We want to feel better. We had to start by convincing people we had a problem, but we spend most of our time now talking about solutions. Our goal is to actually enable people, help them. What gets in the way? What would you need to, and growing more of a community of, early adopters in all these things, in solar and heat pumps and energy conservation, that can become resources to help other community members. Be realistic. Don't try to go beyond your reach, but also don't underestimate your reach. I think what we found more than anything is we've gone a lot further than we thought we could, and we've had a bigger impact than we thought we could. And one of the things, people who are looking for magic or secrets, I will give ours away because I think it's probably not utilized as much as it could be. But again, we're all volunteer. We don't have staff. We don't have a lot of budget, but we've got a lot of things done by finding smart people who can be resources. At Georgia Tech, the Ray C. Anderson Center for Sustainable Business. We did our first project, I think, in 2020, but we've done like 5 or 6 with them. So Michael Oxman is the managing director of the consulting practice. You have to present the problem you want them to help you solve and make it compelling enough that it can be a learning experience for them. An important enough problem. We have graduate students already working in the consulting field for the big consulting firms who spent a semester working with us. We did a project with our first project. We have a green fuels facility that our city put in years ago for compressed natural gas for their vehicles. The idea was to sell it to the school system and so forth. It's been somewhat successful, but it was kind of stalled. And so we had a new mayor come in and he really wanted to ramp that up. And our thought was, well, that's fine for certain types of use, but much of your fleet really can be electrified in a much more cost-effective manner. The emissions will be lower. And so we reached out to the mayor and said, would you be willing, if we can bring in some students to work with you, would you be willing to let them do a study? So we did, and we got the team of 3 really sharp students who analyzed the city's entire fleet, gave recommendations on which vehicle classes should be which type of fuel. Here's what you'll save in terms of maintenance and operations. Here's what you'll save in terms of greenhouse gases. It didn't cost us anything other than you have to be respectful. You have to say, these students, this is an important part of their education. So I don't need to throw them on just anything. But if I can think of a problem, we've done a project to look at how we could bring back drop-off glass recycling to city residents. So that's been implemented now. That first project, the city has got a couple of EVs in their fleet now. They've installed, I think, 4 or 6 level 2 chargers in the community and 2 DC fast chargers. And they're about to do 8 more through a GIFA grant that the city got last year. Those are great resources. Another study we did was to survey and interview our small and medium businesses, not the big corporations, but take the Drawdown Georgia framework, take these 20 solutions and say, which of these are you interested in, would benefit your business? Which are you actually trying now? But most importantly, what roadblocks are you facing? What barriers are you facing? How could we help you? From that, we found great interest in composting, recycling, energy conservation, and energy efficient vehicles. That gave us focus on what we can do that's really impactful. For the first time, we also did a project with our last fall with the UGA has a certificate in sustainability program. So another group of students we've used for a long time, the work that Yale does in their center, in their program for climate change communications, they have a partnership program. I'd been using the reports for a long time, but I went to a session that was to talk about the partnership program. At the end of the session was, if you're interested in working with us, I had to be honest up front. Look, we're just a bunch of volunteers. We don't have staff, but here I've got an idea. There's this program at UGA. I'll submit a proposal there. We'll try to get students in marketing, sustainability, and business. And so we did. We got 3 very bright. And so they worked with our partner at Yale. Our goal was to survey our audience. Who are we reaching today? And what do they feel right now about climate change? How worried are they? How supportive are they of solutions? And we found that 75%, not surprising, but still 75% of the people we're reaching are either alarmed or concerned about climate change. What that tells me is I don't need to keep telling them every day how bad it is, because they already know and they're already stressed. But are they taking action? Do they know how to take it? One of the students last semester has now volunteered to help me implement the recommendations they made. So again, it's the Ray C. Anderson Center for Sustainable Business at Georgia Tech. It's the UGA Cross-Disciplinary Sustainability Certificate. We have Oxford College here. And the challenge there is the students are only there 2 years. But we still have students from there that work with us on, particularly they're interested in how can they help us with outreach to our high schools and middle schools. That's what I would say to your question about what recommendations I have. Don't limit yourself to what you can do with your arms and legs. More arms and legs and smarter minds than my own. Young people, it's so good to be around that kind of energy and enthusiasm. Again, you have to have a compelling proposal. This is part of their learning. Sure, you can make yourself available or get them the access to the city officials in the one case, to businesses in the other case, to do the work they're going to do. As we've gone out to the community, we try to always think, how can we help people solve their problems? We want them to be more energy efficient. We want them to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. We need to put it in a way that means something to them. When we were founding the organization, what do we mean by sustainable? We went back to the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit. Our vision was building a world where people and planet are as important as profit and future generations matter. So when we go to a business person, we're saying, well, we know you need to make money. And in fact, if you don't make money, that's not sustainable either. Same with a government official. If you're putting in a program that can't pay for itself or that taxpayers aren't willing to pay for, that we can't sell the benefit of, then we're wasting our time. So we always try to make sure we're not saying don't worry about the money. We're saying think about the money in the context of what are we doing to the people who live here and the world we live in today, and also the world that our children and their children are going to inherit. It changes the dialogue. It's not just environmental sustainability, it's sustainability in every sense of the word.
Mm-hmm. I love what you said. That was so helpful. And I love what you said about utilizing the energy of students. I have preached that for a long time. I don't agree in hiring young folks and not compensating them. However, I also have really admired the folks at Georgia Tech. I'm familiar with Michael. Him and I were in iGel together. The other folks at Georgia Tech are great. I've heard of the Yale Sustainable Communications folks, and the work that they're doing up there is really phenomenal. And so utilizing what you said is so important, not thinking about the reach and what you can do with your own arms and legs, but how you can utilize the energy and the knowledge of other folks. Young folks want to be a part of these types of practicum projects. This is great on-site, hands-on, valuable learning, not just superficial things, but things that they can really apply to the work that they're passionate about.
And a great benefit for me personally is you meet these students, you get to know them, you connect on social media, you connect on LinkedIn, and then you watch them go through their education, you watch them graduate, you watch them go into their profession. And we've had more than one student come back to speak to students. So, it's really putting us into a fabric of wonderful stuff. And I get to see the great things they do and think, well, maybe I had one small, tiny bit in nudging them in a good direction.
Right. Yes, that's so powerful. And also wanted to plus what you said about helpful dialogue and valuable dialogue. I think that's something that we're losing in society, that important dialogue with each other. The silos that are created for all different reasons are robbing us of the helpful dialogue and the valuable dialogue, where sometimes the conversations won't end up like you wanted them to. But even if you have sparked one thing in this person's mind to think about a little further, it's not a complete loss. So I think that's a really valuable point that you made about dialogue being important, even for folks that you think you definitely won't agree with.
When the students did their survey with the Yale diagnostics, our primary goal was to just say, who are we reaching? In other words, I want to know where they're at, and then I'll know how to tweak my message. There's no point in surveying people we aren't reaching, because they won't get, they won't, whatever I come out with next, they won't get. But I did go off, on my own and point some friends and said, would you take this survey? Because I knew they weren't. They were skeptical. They were doubtful. Right. They were, maybe cautious. Maybe they, okay, I think something's happening. I don't know whether it's us causing. So because I thought that was important too. The students needed to hear from those folks. I didn't want them to think, hey, the whole world already agrees with us. So, I told them, I know who those people are.
It really doesn't help us to only be talking to and only be engaging with the folks that we know for a fact agree with us. It's going to be necessary for us to not necessarily always preach to the choir. So I think that that's really valuable that you told them to do that. We've been talking about the work that Sustainable Newton has been doing to intersect with young folks and other populations of people. How does the work being done by Sustainable Newton intersect with the issues of equity in your community? How is Sustainable Newton working to engage residents in diverse communities in Newton County?
Well, and in the ways that Drawdown Georgia helped us, beyond carbon focus, we had Michael Oxman and David Eady, who also works in the center down there. David is the mayor of Oxford here in our county. Okay. And David's a friend, but David works, his day job is down there at Georgia Tech. He leads the Drawdown Georgia Business Compact. But we had that Michael and David come one of our early webinars. When COVID hit, we just went all virtual because we said, we're not stopping, but we don't want to lose the momentum. And so we just got great people like them to come talk to our audience. But Michael talked so much about equity and all the ways in which, we have to, it's not just enough to have solar and renewable energy or EVs or other things. Are they available to everybody? Are they accessible to the people? And so that sort of focused us there, but we've tried to always keep that focus. So we actually applied the first year that the Drawdown Georgia Climate Solutions and Equity Grant was available. We put together a proposal with our Covington Housing Authority and one of our solar installers to propose putting solar into one of the housing authorities communities where, it would have greatly reduced the energy burden for those folks. We didn't make it to the final selection, but we weren't the least. When we saw who did, we understood why. But the point was, it made us go through that process. We also forged relationships with the housing authority and looked at other ways we could help their residents, their community. So in 2023, I'm also on the board of what was Georgia Bikes is now Go Georgia.
Yeah.
We partnered with them to come in and help us do a walking audit of the Elm Street corridor, which runs from downtown Covington up to our housing authority. You don't have to drive through there often to see people walking with bags of groceries and people in power wheelchairs and just so many things. So the walking audit, which they had been trained in, was basically, and we got officials from our transportation department in the city of Covington, from our community improvement district that manages the Highway 278 corridor. And we all walked it together and said, man, look at that, and look at that. And these were simple things to be fixed. And just getting somebody to walk a street, you just drive through, you don't even see those people, right? And so that aspect of equity, we focus on walking and biking because they're lower emissions than driving a car, but we feel a responsibility to make it safe, to make it enjoyable, to make it comfortable comfortable, things like shade and trees. And so we try to always look at these things, not just from our perspective, but from the perspective of everyone. We have been working for a while, like I think I mentioned earlier, with helping residents take advantage of the clean energy incentives in the Federal Inflation Reduction Act, weatherization, heat pumps, EV charging, induction cooking, and so forth. But a lot of that up until now has been just tax credits, which not everybody can benefit from if you don't have enough income and tax burden to offset that. And even if you do, can you afford to do something now and get paid back for it next year? The state, the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority is, as piloting now, will roll out by March the rebate portion, which is directly targeted towards low and moderate income households. We see our responsibility as working with, other public officials locally and reaching out, making connections with the people who most can benefit from that, make sure they don't miss the opportunity. So it's very important to us. We had a grant from Meta, their community action grant, and we had applied to do a rooftop solar for a local nonprofit. When we started the process, we said we don't want it to be just any nonprofit. We want it to be an organization directly involved on the front lines, serving disadvantaged communities, at-risk communities. And so, we screened everybody. There's obviously the things like, do you have a roof? Do you have a building? Do you have a good roof? Do you use a lot of electricity? And would you save by doing this? But we also want to help an organization that's helping others. And so we settled on a local nonprofit. It's the McIntosh Trail Early Childhood Development Council, and they have sites all over, the metro Atlanta area. But the campus in Newton, we selected their facility, and that went live February, I think, of last year. And so they're just coming up on 1 year. We reached out and say, well, can you give us some information? Has it been beneficial? They said, we could not believe how much it saves and how much we've been able to put that money back into serving families, serving children, serving pregnant mothers. And so they said, we're so excited. We're trying to figure out how can we do this on all our campuses. So, and we saw, obviously we want to help them because they're doing good work. But as advocates for clean energy, we get tired of hearing that, EVs and solar, it's for rich people. And it's nice that you can have that, and certainly there are barriers we have to work to remove, but we know that ultimately the most benefit goes, and the climate benefit disproportionately goes there too, because they're the ones least likely to have a place to go when it's 105 degrees or when we've got 20 inches of rain or a storm blows through. So we're doing this for everybody, and we're trying to, educate, engage everybody, but ultimately we're trying to be real deliberate. The work the students did with the Yale survey for us, we also believe that will be a useful tool. We need to rethink how we communicate so that we are making sure, and it's not, it is race and ethnicity, income level, but sometimes it's just young and old. Sometimes it's just geographic diversity within our county. We know the people we know in the places we live, but through this survey, we're finding people that there's somebody out there in the southwest part of the county, almost in Henry County, who has put solar on their home or has an induction cooktop or has a heat pump. It has to be an ever-present part of how we look at things, and we try. Nobody's perfect, but we try.
Yes, it sounds like you all are doing the best that you can, and at this point, that's all we can do. I also really appreciate the project you talked about with the Go Georgia folks. We talked to John Devine, the executive director over at Go Georgia, was one of our guests on the show, and he was wonderful. And we had a great conversation about equity and about, what does trails look like? One of the reasons why they changed from Georgia Bikes to Go Georgia was thinking about walking and biking, but also about people in electric wheelchairs, also about folks with other transportation needs, and thinking about how do these trails, how do these walking spaces, how are they safe? How are they comfortable? You talked about shade and so on. We know we have a heat island problem here in Atlanta in the metro and all those things. So I love that you all did that of just walking that space and seeing, okay, what is this? How can we not only beautify, but also make sure that this is a safe space to travel in additional ways that isn't just in your car. Just
curb cuts and things where they were tilted at an angle and you walk across it. But you're imagining if I was rolling through here in a wheelchair, I could tip over, or I could be suddenly turn down the road,
Right.
and you just don't see that driving by. So
Right. So that's so important for equity. As somebody who has done climate and environmental justice for over 15 years, certainly race and ethnicity is very prevalent for me. But we know that class, we know that, economic, status is just as prevalent, even if it's not, something that people talk about as much. It is just as prevalent, especially in the metro and especially in this part of Georgia. We have to be cognizant of that when we're thinking about equity. And everything that you said has been really helpful today. So I want to thank you again for being on the show with us. And we always like to ask our guests closing question, which is my favorite question. What is giving you hope around climate in Georgia?
Well, there's a lot of things, but one, it would be all the young people we get the opportunity to work with. Their enthusiasm, their passion, their intelligence, their creativity. It's realizing that I can only do, as one person, I can only do so much, but if I can play a small role in helping a whole group of young people down the journey and getting them to believe in their power and their agency to make things happen, I feel a whole lot better when someday when I leave here, I'll know that, that I made a difference. For me personally, it's taking action and knowing I have agency. Nobody can take that away. We can worry about what happens to this incentive or that incentive, this program, that program. In the last 3 months, my wife and I did an energy audit, installed spray foam insulation in the attic and the crawl space, and last week installed a heat pump to replace our 20-year-old forced air furnace and air conditioner. I'm fortunate that we can do that, but I also feel good that I did that, and I hope that it is leading by example, that somebody else will say, okay, well, if he can do it, I can do it. That's how I ended up with an EV, because I had a friend that seemed like she could go everywhere and do everything and find a way to charge. So if she could do it, I can do it. So it's just all the little stuff, but it's being part of something bigger and knowing that on the days I'm not feeling so good, somebody else is. And on the days they're not, I guess it's hard to feel hopeless or sorry for yourself when you're thinking, no, that person needs me. I can't let her down. I can't let him down. I met a filmmaker who lives in Minnesota, and I forget where I'd seen her featured in a blog, but we became good friends, and she'll call me every once in a while out of the blue and just say, I'm just really feeling down. Make me feel better. So I get hope by realizing I'm not going to let somebody else go without hope. That's where I get my hope from.
That's beautiful. And I totally agree with you, especially the young folks. It is very easy to get bogged down in this work and kind of your blinders are on and you're trying to get your work done and, you feeling hopeless. So when you're seeing folks benefiting from the work that you're doing and hearing about the story of the work, that is helpful to get you back on track. Absolutely. Maurice, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I've loved hearing about the things that you all are doing at Sustainable Newton. It sounds, as I said, familiar problems that are having familiar solutions. All of us over here on the east side of the metro. I really appreciate the work that you all are doing and the time you took to talk to us today. Thank you so much for being here.
It's been great. I really appreciate the opportunity. I also appreciate all the other conversations that you've been bringing to us and look forward to hearing more.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Definitely join us next time. We'll have another great Georgia leader working on climate solutions here in our state. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye.